Hey y'all, welcome to the podcast, the Barefoot Parenting Podcast, where we're currently exploring empowering stories and insights around natural birth and especially my favorite, home birth. You know, I've had all home births except for my very first one. He was born in the birthing center, but still with the midwives, of course, just like a home, just like anyone else. Just like anyone else's home, the birthing center was built just like a home. I'm your host, Cassie Hutton, and today's episode is a special dive into a topic that resonates with a lot of expecting parents. Understanding pain tolerance. I have so many mamas tell me I have a high pain tolerance or I don't have a high pain tolerance. And we're going to talk about that today and why that does or does not matter. But first, we're going to talk about my beta founding program. The problem that most women have with home birth is a fear of not having proper care. And so my course dives deep into the care that you get with home birth and also the fear around the pain. So the in case something goes wrong, the anxiety and fear that cloud the minds of Christian moms dreaming of a peaceful home birth the way that God designed. The unknowns and the pains of childbirth can cast shadows, leaving room for doubt and apprehension. But imagine the transformation that awaits you, all because you're believing lies. And now I want you to imagine this. I want you to step into a world where childbirth becomes a sacred, empowering journey. Christian moms who can embrace the comprehensive home birth course. So my home birth course, an Exodus birth, can now, once you finished it, navigate labor with confidence and faith. That fear that you once had whenever you started, when you wanted that home birth, but there was just a fear that was once there and it once loomed over you, it's now been replaced with a deep sense of assurance and connection to the Holy Spirit and His guidance during your miraculous experience. So if you want that and you're ready to rewrite your birth story at home, an Exodus birth course is the guiding hope that bridges that gap between the apprehension that you are feeling and the confidence to step into a home birth and to know that you can do it and that you are safe and sound in Jesus' arms. So join me on that transformative journey where education meets faith. And together, we're going to pave the way for a home birth experience that aligns with your spiritual beliefs and empowers you every step of the way. So I want you to embrace the beauty of childbirth with knowledge and God's word as your anchor. So if you want to be a part of that program, go down into the show notes of this podcast, click on the Beta Founding Members link, read all about it. At the very bottom of that sales page, you will find the link to sign up for my course. You will see all that's included in it. All of the information is included in there, including my story and the reason that I chose home birth and the reason that I knew home birth was right for me. And maybe that's how you feel. I was far more scared of an epidural than I ever was of natural childbirth pain. And maybe you've already been through the epidural experience and that just, you were like, man, I just hated that after effects of the epidural. I really didn't like it. I didn't get to do this with my baby. I just feel like I lost out on that golden hour after the baby was born and that bonding time. You don't miss out on that whenever you have a home birth and whenever you partner with a midwife who trusts you, trusts your abilities, and is highly, highly trained in so many areas to make sure that you and your baby are safe. They don't get to practice midwifery for my very first midwife had been practicing for 40 years, and I just had this thought in my mind that clicked, and I said, you know what? A midwife doesn't get to practice midwifery for 40 years because they deliver unhealthy babies and unhealthy mamas. Clearly, she knows what she's doing. She's never lost her license in 40 years. So clearly she understands when a mom needs to be referred to the doctor and that mama is out of her care now. And what confidence that a mom can have in knowing that she did all she could do to actually make her birth experience the best possible by choosing a home birth. And that's not to shame anyone who chose a hospital birth, because as you have heard on my podcast, there have been many and numerous amazing hospital births as well, all natural hospital births. But all natural is the way to go, and just not giving your power over to someone else. I was reading even a Facebook post today about a mom's child who is on a GI tract, a feeding tube, and she's young and she's a baby. And so there's an at-home healthcare nurse that comes, and she made the comment on this Facebook post that this nurse is giving her baby things like Tylenol to help with pain because the baby's kind of sick right now. And she made this, emoji face of like, well, the nurse is the one giving it to her. And I'm like, but you're the parent. You're the one that gets to decide. That kind of stuff is we're giving our power over to a medical system instead of asking every question and understanding what we're doing to our children every single time that we give them these medicines, something that seems so harmless as Tylenol and ibuprofen. So we're going to get into all of that today. I'm kind of ranting there before we get started, but I also want to talk about my Facebook group. So before we dive into today's episode, I want you to jump on over to the new Facebook group. I just created it in the last few weeks, the Exodus Birth Facebook community. Join other like-minded mamas who are seeking natural childbirth experiences, but also be empowered in your parenting journey too. It is called the Exodus Birth Facebook community, but things that we share in there are parenting stories, prayers, live questions and answers. You will get things like recipes for natural tinctures. I shared a dandelion salve recipe the other day in there that we will use once the baby gets here, like if he needs something on his umbilical cord, circumcisions, if you're circumcising. You can use it on burns, cuts, scrapes, and there's no chemicals in it. There's 3 ingredients, 4 if you want to add EOs to it. But these mamas are crunchy-minded, natural-minded mamas just like you, and we share homemade recipes and all the things that an old soul can sink their teeth into, including recipes, sourdough experiences. You get to bring your own uniqueness to the group as well and learn from others, and we can just encourage each other in that natural-minded mama way. Welcome to the Barefoot Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Cassie Hutton. I help Christian moms have a home birth they desire through education and the Word. If you're an old soul that is passionate about restoring godly wisdom and disconnecting from this interconnected world, then you're in the right place. Let's discuss godly restoration through the 5 H's of home: home birth, homeschool, homemaking, homemade, home remedies, and health. All right, before we get started, I want to express the importance of acknowledging the uniqueness of every birthing journey. Whether you're a soon-to-be parent, a birth enthusiast, or just curious about the wonders of natural birth, this episode is for you. So to kick things off, let's explore the concept of pain tolerance in the context of childbirth. So pain tolerance varies among everybody, right? Some may wonder if a high pain tolerance correlates with choosing an unmedicated birth. A lot of women have told me. One of the last persons that I talked to, she said, I have a high pain tolerance. And honestly, I was in that same mindset whenever I went into my first birth. I thought to myself, I remember whenever I had my wisdom teeth pulled, and it was like 2 weeks of just excruciating pain. And I remember the way that I dealt with that pain was not sitting on the couch. I had to get up, I had to move around, I had to go do something in order to distract my mind from the pain that I was constantly feeling. And basically, that's a lot like childbirth and labor can be. So it had really nothing to do with an actual high pain tolerance, but rather how do you deal with pain? And that's what I want to emphasize on having an all-natural childbirth experience. If that's what you are desiring, you simply have to learn what works for me. How can I distract my mind from this pain? How can I actually shift my mindset and my perception of this pain? Because it's actually a physiological process that we're going to talk about here in just a minute, because I've heard incredible stories from different moms, each with their own experience, and it's a reminder that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to childbirth. What works for me is not going to work for you. What I like during labor is maybe not something that you're going to like during labor. And so you need to listen to different stories. You need to listen to different moms. You need to listen to and kind of practice all these different techniques that are given for labor and childbirth so that you can figure out what's going to help you be successful in your natural childbirth experience. So there are different factors that influence pain perception during labor. So let's dive into those factors. And again, the perception of it during labor. So the release of hormones like oxytocin and the endorphins, and also the psychological aspects of the mindset and preparedness All of those elements play a role in how you're going to deal with your pain. So in the last episode, I also shared with you about the atmosphere that you're creating, and how to create a safe environment can help you relieve pain and progress labor. So if you haven't listened to episode 36, go do that. It is just as important in the journey to an all-natural birth as understanding the physiological process and what we're going to talk about here today in this episode. The two go hand in hand. So if you haven't listened to creating your environment, go listen to that and then come back and listen to this one, or listen to this one and then go back and listen to that one. But they do go hand in hand. Your environment shapes the way that you feel. So if you think about walking into a home, someone's home, think about the different homes that you've walked into. The smell, the sight, the aesthetics, the functionality, what makes it welcoming and what makes it a good memory for you. That's the same with your birth space. You need to create that welcoming, safe, what smells good, what looks good, what causes relaxation. Compared to you walk into a place where the people or the atmosphere is just causes you to tense up. The same thing can happen during birth, which can stall your labor, which can cause just lots of things, your higher pain tolerance and all the things. So physical factors that can help relieve pain definitely include movement and positions. These women that are told to lie on their back during labor, I just cannot for the life of me ever imagine laying on my back and trying to labor. I have labored on my side. In fact, the last 2 labors, I lay on my side until about that point of transition, when things really start to pick up and labor gets quite a bit more intense. I'm able to just kind of lay there and just breathe through the contractions and know that each one of them is moving my baby down and getting my baby closer to being here. But once that transition hits and that adrenaline rush comes and you kind of feel like you're losing it for a moment, I have to get up. I usually get up out of bed and I've walked around the room and found a different position in a different laboring space. I actually just can really, that's when I really like to exclude myself from everybody. I do not want to be touched. I do not want any help at that point. I just need to move around and get into a position that I like. And so movement, which also helps the baby move through your pelvis, because your bones are able to shift and move and you're not sitting there lying on that sacrum, which we're going to talk about in a minute. That sacrum has to actually move, and that's in your backside. So if you're laying on it, that can't move and allow baby to move through the birth canal. And also relaxation techniques. We're going to get into that. These all contribute to the shaping of the birthing experience, and it's fascinating how these elements all intertwine, how it's such a physical thing and a psychological thing. So, for our listeners that are seeking practical tips, I've got you covered. Let's talk about some effective pain relief techniques. So first, breathing, rhythmic breathing and patterned breathing. So this came naturally to me, other than there were a couple of times where I got high-pitched in my breathing with my first baby, in my first labor, and the midwife just gently said, no, low moans, don't get high-pitched, because those low moans are just can help your abdomen. Really, you're moving things through your abdomen instead of up high in your throat. So whenever you're making those moaning sounds during labor, and if this is your first labor and you're not sure about it, look, it just comes naturally. It's just part of it. It's just what happens whenever the contractions come. So teaching you to breathe, I don't know, from my personal experience, and again, it is totally up to you and what your experience is. But for me to actually learn to breathe, I don't know that I could have learned to breathe. It just came naturally. It just was part of the process. But it is a powerful tool to manage pain and to help you stay focused. If you're focused on your breathing instead of the pain, obviously that's a distraction, and that can help the pain perception and release the endorphins that you need through this process. So oxytocin is the main hormone that you need to cause labor to start, to induce labor. But oxytocin is a huge factor for those endorphins that need to be released that are actually your painkillers. And so oxytocin is the love-making hormone. It's the hormone that's released whenever you are connecting with other people, you're making those relationships, you are in a place that you are feeling trusted and trustworthy, and you are just in that place of seeking relationship. And so when that oxytocin is released, so are the endorphins. And so you want to get into that relaxed state. And a lot of women can even actually get this endorphin high during labor. In Anna Mae's Guide to Childbirth, Anna Mae was a famous midwife. She shares stories of women actually having, like, they actually had orgasms during their labor because the endorphins and the oxytocin just were flowing so well. It's really quite amazing that you can actually tap into this. It is an actual thing. So, but going back to movement and position, let's just keep on that track. Swaying, rocking, and changing positions are definitely bring comfort and progress labor. It's about finding what works best for you, once again. So hands up high during labor. This is where I'm talking about that sacrum starting to move. When your hands go up high during labor, this is a sign that you're about to deliver a baby, and it's moving through that area where your bones are going to actually move. There's actually a picture that went viral where a lady was, from the backside, you could see that sacrum bone actually move as the baby passed through that area, and you don't feel it. This is not something that you necessarily feel, but someone from behind can see it, and this picture captured it, and it was an amazing thing. I wrote about it in the mini course that I was trying to write for before I started this main course. But it really is amazing that I definitely do this. I remember with my last birth especially, I had that transition hit and I went to the bathroom, and I remember putting my hands up high on, we had a new shower. We had just remodeled our bathroom, and there was this ledge that came off the shower, and that's where I just squatted down. I put my hands right there on that ledge of the shower, and they were above my head. And so if you're in like a hospital room or something like that, you know, sometimes they'll have those ropes where you can hold onto something up high and sway. And so there are places that support that kind of stuff. But if you don't, and you have like a bathroom, or even if you go over to the hospital bed and you're able to squat down, your hands can still be above you. Something that you can just grab onto that's above you and sway back and forth can be super helpful. If you like massages and counterpressure, that can definitely be a game changer. Gentle touches on the lower back, the shoulders, the feet. If you have someone there that knows that reflexology and how to provide that for you, it can definitely be a much needed relief during contractions. Me personally, I did not want to be touched. Like, the hotness of people's hands made me hot, and I didn't like it. And I shared that on some of the last episodes. That's just not for me, but maybe it is for you. You have to find what works for you. There's lots of different exercises that you can find. So warm water is obviously a huge factor. So whenever you go into labor, you're actually those contractions are putting almost close to like 60 pounds of pressure on your cervix. Whereas if you labor in a pool, the reason it's nature's epidural is because, right, you get into the water, everyone knows it makes you lighter. You're not near as heavy. When you get into the water, you can float. And so it's taking all of that pressure off of the cervix, and it relieves up to 20 pounds of pressure off of the cervix. That's why so many women want to labor in the pool, and they don't want to get out of the pool, and rightfully so. So that is one of the main reasons I'm definitely trying the water birth this time and going to make it happen. This is one of the main things I teach in my course is how to visualize, how to get those visions from Jesus as a powerful tool for maintaining the mindset that you need to stay focused and not to focus on something different and not the pain. This is huge for me personally. So it is really like a mental escape, but it's also a coping mechanism to help you navigate the birthing process with confidence, because I teach you how to receive it from Jesus. And so he's giving you exactly what you need to stay focused But it's also just a beautiful thing because it's also a prophetic picture of your birth and what God is speaking over your birth and over your baby and over this experience and what's next to come. So there's another thing that if you please go and see a Webster's chiropractor during your pregnancy. But she taught me that there's a tendon that runs right under your butt bone. So not your tailbone, not the middle bone at the very bottom of your spine, but the two bones that you actually sit on. There's a tendon that runs right underneath there. So if you're laying on your belly and you put your finger right at the tip of the bottom of your butt bone, there's a tendon right there. And she said, if you can have someone just apply pressure right there during labor, she said it will help tremendously. So we're going to try that if I need it during this next birth. So I hope that these techniques and what I've talked about here on this episode will help you build confidence for your natural birth. You can do it. Women have done it for thousands and thousands of years. This is God's design. You simply just have to shift your mindset from believing the lies that childbirth has to be so extremely painful and excruciating to know I can do this because it's God's design. It's what He did for us. And it's possible that society has hammered into us these lies that we have to go through all of this pain. And so I've shared lots of uplifting birth stories from incredible women with varying pain tolerance on this podcast platform. Please go and listen to them. Each story is a testament to the strength and resilience of the birthing experience, but more so about the negative effects of drugs and epidurals and pain medicine. Really, a lot of the women who chose natural birth after having an epidural, it was because the epidural was so bad, or they felt like they lost control, or they felt like it contributed to them having all the interventions that went all the way to a C-section that just caused them to not have near the birth experience that they actually wanted. And so, an epidural, you're not told this either. An epidural and fentanyl is a big deal right now, right? It's a street drug that's killing people. My mom's boyfriend's son was just passed away within this last year. It was fentanyl. That's what killed him. He's my age. And so this is a huge deal right now, and I understand that it's controlled in the hospital, but it's the very thing you're putting into your body when you get an epidural. Fentanyl is the painkiller in an epidural. So think about that. I mean, in no other time during your pregnancy would fentanyl be okay to put into your body. Your baby would be taken from you. You would not be allowed. That would be considered drug use. But because it's in a controlled environment in the hospital, suddenly it's okay to put fentanyl into your body. And I'm not shaming anyone for that, but this is the reality that we're not told. And these are the things that are kept from us. Unless you do your own research, you're not told as they give you this epidural for your pain relief that, hey, we're putting fentanyl into your body and your baby's fixing to be born. Your baby's probably going to still be in your body for a few hours, so they're going to get a dose of this fentanyl as well. And we wonder why babies can't nurse, or moms don't have the ability in that golden hour to, bond with their babies. Here we are injecting everyone full of all of these synthetic drugs. And so just be aware of that. And be sure, again, to go and listen to the Home Birth Environment podcast that I did in episode 36, because it's so important and is such a key. Your birthing environment is such a key to creating a space that aligns with your vision and your preference and lowering that pain tolerance and quickening labor. So now, as we wrap up this episode, I want to hear from you, our amazing listeners. What strategies have you used to cope with the pain in challenging situations? How do you envision your ideal birthing environment? Have you encountered any myths or fears about natural childbirth that you'd like us to explore in future episodes? Please jump over to the Facebook group and the Exodus Birth community and leave your comments on your experiences and how you coped with that labor. I will have that post the day that this podcast releases. That post will be there, and you can go through there and share with us your coping mechanisms. And so as we wrap up, I encourage you to take action, research, and practice the pain relief methods that we've discussed. Develop a pain plan, a birth plan that aligns with your preferences, and seek out support groups, resources, just like the Facebook communities, to connect with like-minded individuals. And that includes your healthcare provider. This is the last thing I'm going to rant on. I cannot express enough that if you want an all-natural birth, then you need to find a provider that is naturally minded in birth too. This is why the midwives are so good. For anyone that wants a natural birth, that, for me going into it, I wasn't worried that something was going to happen to me. I was a little bit more worried, like, what if something happens to the baby during birth? And so that's why I knew that I needed to choose a midwife, because I needed them to be naturally minded too. I needed to know that they were not telling me one thing in the office and going to do another thing in the hospital once I got there. So doctors, OBs, are trained to treat pregnancy as though it's a medical condition that will go wrong. So keep that in mind. When you hire an OB, you need to know that they have been able to shift their mindset a little bit away from the way that they were trained when they went through medical school, because they are trained to treat pregnancy as a medical condition, whereas midwives are not. They are trained to treat birth as a normal process and to be there to help you in case something goes wrong. They're not looking for something to go wrong all the time and sending you to go on a million different tests all the time and to tell you, well, we better check that because I'm not sure about this. And it's just a much more relaxed experience altogether. It's not something that you need to be worried about as you're preparing to bring your baby into this world. So I want to thank you for joining me on this journey into empowering natural birth. Remember, you have the strength within you to embrace this transformative experience. And for a deeper dive into today's topic and more empowering insights, please join the Facebook community and sign up for an Exodus Birth and the Beta Founding Members Program. We will cover so much more in this course, and you will not be sorry that you signed up for it. Subscribe, share your thoughts on the podcast. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes where we continue to explore the wonders of childbirth. Until next time, embrace the journey, and remember, you're not alone in this beautiful adventure of bringing new life into the world. Please, if you have been listening for any amount of time, please go and leave a review and share this podcast with your crunchy mama friends. Take care and happy listening. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Barefoot Parenting. If what you're doing works for you, is healthy for your family, and is growing you in the ways you need to grow, then it's time to step out of the feeling of guilt and shame and wear your Barefoot Mama badge proudly. Remember, barefoot parents are doing things differently, so be encouraged today. If you're feeling the pushback in your parenting style, you're doing something right.